This is a test. I'm making sure I'm picking up. So, testing. This is Violet Chilcote. Today is Wednesday, April 7th, 2010, and I am in the home of Mrs. Hilda Norwood. Mrs. Norwood, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself and tell us where and when you were born?
My name is Hilda Norwood. I was born in Belltown, Delaware in 1925. I have 3 sisters that were born here.
And how was it your family came to this area originally?
Because our great-grandfather bought the land in the early 1800s, and he saw that his grandsons got the land. So my father was one of his grandsons, and we happened to get this part of the land in Belltown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have a lovely home. Yeah, it's
Thank
beautiful. Yeah. And tell me your earliest recollections of growing up. You grew up on a farm, but not this farm, one nearby here.
Well, until I was 3 years old, we lived here. And then my father bought a farm down on Beaver Dam Road. And we moved there, and I lived there until I moved up here in 1999, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I inherited this place, and I was glad to move back.
Mm-hmm. It's moving home.
My mother and father had both died. But they lived to be a nice age. My mother was 91, and my daddy was 89 when he died. They were very good parents.
Tell me each of their names. What was your mother's name?
Mother was Loretta. My daddy was Clarence. You want to know my sister's name?
Sure.
Cora, Agnes, and Dolores. I was a baby girl, as you were. So they said I was spoiled, but I enjoyed being spoiled. We're very close now. One sister has died.
And was your mother local? Where did she come
My
from?
mother was born in Lewis, Delaware, on Park Avenue. And my father was born right here. Did I say that before?
Oh, that's okay. And tell me what your fondest early family memories were. What do you remember that you did as a family that was interesting and fun? What were the things you
Well, in
did?
those days, we looked forward to going to Lewis to do our shopping once a week. We also went to a local church, which is about a half mile from here. And it was during the horse and buggy days, though, that we lived up here as children. My father finally got a car in 1929.
Must have been one of the first cars around here.
I suppose so. But in the meantime, when he wasn't around to drive us, my mother could drive the horses, or we'd go to town with a carriage. And we could get a train to Lewis. We could go over to Nassau and get a train to go to town. And there were buses going on the highway, short line, Greyhound, and Red Star, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And there was a train early on into Rehoboth? Did that continue to run?
It probably did, because the one that was here was running when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure Rehoboth was a more popular town than Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel sure that it would continue to Rehoboth.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more. You had mentioned a place called Rosedale, and what was Rosedale like, and where was that? And you were, we were talking a little bit about Rosedale, and tell me a little bit
It
more
was
about.
Rosedale Beach. It was owned by colored people. And it was just a place we could go to have fun. If we could swim, we could go in the water, the boardwalk, and there was dancing. And we just looked forward to special days to go to Rosedale in the summertime. It was our Rehoboth Beach, really.
Mm-hmm. And why was that? Did you feel more comfortable there?
That's just because it was our beach. You know, we felt at home there, I suppose.
It was an African American
right.
facility and beach with all the other attributes. Yeah.
So that was our entertainment in the summertime.
Yeah.
We really didn't look for much entertainment in the winter because we're going to school. That was it.
Yeah.
We'd go to school and we'd go to church regularly.
And your church was the one down here on
Plantation Road.
The small one on Plantations
Yes.
Road. Mm-hmm. And tell me about school. Where was your school, and how big was it, and what was it like?
Our school was a one-room school, and had grades 1 to 8 for many years, and we would walk to school. Except on rainy days, our parents would take us. We have strict teachers, and you have to imagine how a teacher took care of 8 grades, but it worked. We didn't have any trouble when we went to other schools.
Mm-hmm.
So we had dedicated teachers, and they loved you, but we were well disciplined in that one-room school.
How many children would be in the one room?
So the lowest number would be in the 22 or 23, but it, it got to be as many as 40 sometime.
And one teacher.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh. And they're all 8 different grades.
Right.
Wow.
But we would have visiting teachers every 6 weeks. Say someone would come help give us a plan for teaching music or learning music and art and things like that. We had mostly new supplies in our one-room school.
No?
Yes.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
Well, there were schools. Our school was a state board school. The ones in the town were called special schools, special districts. So by our being a state board, we would get all new supplies.
Oh, okay.
But when we would come to 9th grade to go to Lewis, they would get supplies from the school on the Savannah Road.
So they were hand-me-downs.
They were, yes.
You got.
So we were lucky enough to get the new ones.
That's interesting. I didn't know there was that kind of a differentiation of state schools and the others. Mm-hmm.
When we first went, there was no running water. We had pumps, and we had just a bathroom with it, and they would have to clean that soap off. But in later years, they did get the bathroom and running water.
Mm. Yeah.
And that was probably in the 40s, 48, something like that.
Mm.
But the state board took care of us. We had everything we needed.
Yeah. And then after 8th grade, you knew about the Lewis School because.
Yes, after 8th grade, we went to the Lewis School.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Lewis Junior High then, but it had from 1 to 9th grade.
So it had that extra grade that you
Yes.
didn't have.
Uh-huh. Right.
And then
After then, we had to go to boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Delaware State, which is in Dover, so we had to stay there. Well, I mean, of course, if it was boarding school, we stayed there. And each of us spent 7 years at Delaware State. And then all of us became elementary teachers but one, and she taught home economics
Mm-hmm.
by choice.
Of your sisters.
Yes.
In the family. Yeah.
At that time, it was main things women could go and could train for would be teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good experience. Most of us liked it very much. And I did come back and teach in the school that I went to for elementary school. And I taught there 17 years.
And were you the only teacher
Yes.
of the grades 1 through 8 for
Yes.
17 years?
Yes. And a lot of the kids were, well, the older kids were as large as I was, and some of them, when I went back, there were one or two still. When I went back to teach, some of my class schoolmates were still there, one or two.
Is that right?
But they were very respectful, and in those times, the parents disciplined the children before they came
Mm-hmm.
to school.
Let me ask you a little bit about your education. So when you went to Delaware State, originally it was just to finish high school for another 3 years, but then you decided to stay the additional 4 to get a college of teaching degree.
That's what we had to do, yes,
Yeah.
to get that.
Now, was it unusual to do that, or most of the kids that you went with, did they stop school after their senior year?
After the 12th grade, many students stopped,
Mm-hmm.
probably because of expense and being away from home,
Mm-hmm.
or just being grown at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. So then here you came back and you taught where you were taught, and for 17 years. Then what happened at year 17? Why did you
that
leave
in
there?
'64, I believe they were integrating the schools,
Mm-hmm.
and they closed the one-room schools, most of them except Rapids Ferry, and they stayed open a year longer. And then I got a job at Lewis in town, where I also went to school for the 9th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole teaching career, the rest of my teaching career was at Cape Ann Local School District, 1st grade teacher.
Oh, okay. How did you find that? Here you are moving from this historically all black school into the first year integrated into this whole new white system. What was that like? How was that for you?
It wasn't that immediate. Maybe it was a year after, or 2 years after I had been to the black school, that we were integrated.
So
To the-
initially you went into the Lewis black school
yes.
from 1 to 9, and then about 2 years later everyone became
yeah,
integrated.
together. Yes.
Mhm.
So then we became part of Cape Ann Local School District.
Mhm.
And that worked out very well.
How many African American teachers were there among the faculty at that time in 1960, about 1966, I guess it would have been? Were you one of the few?
We would, all of us, maybe it was 4 of us that were over at the Lewis Junior High School that were transferred to the integrated school.
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they came from other schools too.
Mm-hmm.
Other black teachers came to Lewis.
Yeah. And that worked well.
I thought it went very well, yes.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. And then you taught there for how many years? You were in that school district?
27 years,
27 years.
yes.
And you retired in?
1991.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What were do you remember some of the most interesting times teaching, or toughest times, or?
Well, they were all, it was great to be with other teachers after being in a one-room school and then going to a school like that. It was great having other adults to associate with.
Mm-hmm.
And we were accepted. We became part of the education organization and took active part in everything.
Any stories about your students that you would like to share?
No,
No.
I had some very good children.
Mm-hmm.
And not except, you have a few. And the ones that you had the problem with, they say now that they're grown, you remember me? Do you remember me in first grade? And he's the one you do remember, usually.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful what teachers give us. They change children's lives.
Mm. Yes, I enjoyed it every year of it.
But, tell me a little bit. You said that you did occasionally also go into Rehoboth. Tell me a little bit about what you remember of Rehoboth Beach, what it was like, and then I want to ask you about your father's work in Rehoboth too.
Rehoboth Beach, when we would go to Rehoboth, we would go, like if we belonged to a Sunday school or something, we would go to Rehoboth Beach. And our place was near the Henlopen, which is now standing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a part of the beach that we could go. We could walk on the boardwalk, but if we wanted to go in the water or enjoy the beach, we would have to go by the Henlopen in that restricted area. And I'm not sure just when it changed, but we enjoyed that. We knew what was happening, so. And it was an outing for us from the country, so that's where we went. And we could go to Lewis Beach the same way.
Did Lewis have a restricted
Restricted
beach as
place.
well?
And we were together. We just enjoyed it. That was our summer outings to go to Lewis, Rosedale, or Rehoboth Beach.
Yeah.
There was a motel that's still there, was owned by colored people. The one as you're leaving Rehoboth, it was owned by them for a long while. It has not been owned by the whites for very long. In fact, some of the people that worked, blacks that came to Rehoboth to work, stayed there in that one motel.
It's the one on the last one on the right as
yes.
you leave Rehoboth.
Yes.
I'll have to remember the name of that. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I know there was a hotel called the Brick Hotel that was in that area, but I'm not sure it's the same one. But
This was the motel. I don't know about
it's
the
a
Brick
motel.
Hotel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
And there was they had several places in that area for entertainment for our race.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the names of those, or can describe them some way?
So that I cannot remember the name just now. I don't know who could supply that either.
There was one place I heard about called the Dewdrop Inn.
Dewdrop Inn, yes.
It was quite the place. Have
yes.
you been there? Did you go there?
Yes, we went there.
Tell me about it. What was it like? What did
Well,
it
they
look
had the
like?
music, the Nickelodeon. Isn't that what they were called? Nickelodeon.
Oh, Nickelodeon.
And that's where you meet friends. It should be another place too, over on the left side, but I don't remember the name of that.
Yeah. I understand the Dewdrop Inn would get a lot of live bands. It was quite a popular place.
Well, that's the way as Rosedale. We would get the popular band.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. The real popular one. Benny Goodman, everybody.
Is that right? Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Yeah. Interesting. You mentioned that when you went into Rehoboth, I'm just going to follow up on this a little bit, that it was fine to walk down the boardwalk and go to the segregated beach. did you feel comfortable going on any of the amusements or into any of the stores, or was that just not allowed?
Actually, I don't remember yes I do, the Muse was being there, was just like merry-go-round or something. They did not have that playland then.
Yeah.
But other than that, we just go to boardwalk and go to the beach.
Restaurants were the same way.
Yes, there were restaurants like the Dewdrop had food.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Norwood, we were talking about a little bit about your family background earlier, and you we didn't really get to talk too much about your father, and I understand that he really played an important role in Rehoboth Beach history. Can you tell me just a little bit about where he went to school and what his career life was before we talk specifically about Rehoboth?
His elementary school life was here in Belltown.
Mm-hmm.
The school was located in about the same place. Of course, this one's a new one compared to where he went.
Mm-hmm.
And it went from 1st to 8th grade. After that, I believe he went to Washington to his uncle's, and he got his degree from Howard University. It was an academy at that time,
Mm-hmm.
in education evidently, because after he finished that, he did come home, and he taught for a while in a one-room school near Millsboro. I think his teaching career was about 2 years. I don't think he cared for that. So when he finally went to Florida to work as a waiter, or that's what he did when he went to Florida. I don't have any idea how long he stayed there, but when he came back home to live with his parents, he started working at the Bellhaven Hotel. The Henlopen first, and then the Bellhaven Hotel in Rehoboth.
He started at the Henlopen in what role?
I suppose he was just a waiter
Mm-hmm.
at that time. But then he didn't spend very many years there. He went to Bellhaven, and I would think he spent all my youth years there, and then later too. He retired when he was about 65. That was his season job, but he also farmed.
Mm-hmm.
He did this farming, and he worked at the apple orchard then to have income.
And the apple orchard is the Nassau Orchard?
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right where you see Orchard Road,
Mm.
that's where he worked.
Oh.
And that was a job he could do winter and summer. No, his summer was at the beach. And he farmed here. He farmed. Then later he bought a farm down Beaver Dam Road, which is known as now. And he carried on the farm, but he kept on as a waiter in the season.
Mm-hmm.
He hired college men. I think that was because he understood the needs that they had, but he also had some local men to help train them.
And he moved over, you had mentioned, as the maitre d', as a promotion
Yes.
to the Bellhaven.
Yes, and he was in charge of hiring the waiters and, of course, seeing what a maitre d' does. He made a lot of friends, and he liked to talk, so he would find out things about it. And he did that I probably said he did that until he was about 65, and he retired and just worked on the farm. And people would still occasionally call him to serve dinners or something like that.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
In their home?
In their home,
It's a
and
private
right,
party?
and then in clubs,
Oh,
like
okay.
Seaford Country Club or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He would hire the other help, and he would be in charge.
Yeah.
And he liked that. He liked working with the young men. He did a good job with the young men. And of course, when he was away to work, it wasn't a day-to-day job at the beach, because in that time there were horse and buggies and very few cars. So he would have to stay down at the hotel. It was a special place provided for the help. And then my mother he would hire someone to do the farm, and my mother would take care of the business angle.
Mhm.
And he would come home frequently.
So then he must have, how, do you remember how old he was when he passed away?
89.
89.
Wait a minute, am I telling it right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 89, and my mother died when she was 91.
91. And so that means he was there in the very early days if he was going by horse and buggy, and he lasted until age 65, and then he had a long sort of retirement period where he
Yes,
also did some work.
Then he seemed satisfied to be staying at the farm then, unless called on otherwise. He wanted all of us to go to school, and we did. We had to go to boarding school for 7 years, each of us. But that was important to him.
Mm-hmm, that you all were educated
Yes.
and had a profession. Mm-hmm.
And we satisfied him by being honor students when we were away. I'm sure he would have been satisfied if we just passed, but but I think he was proud. My mother said, well, don't boast, don't brag.
Yeah.
But he was glad that he was able to do that.
That's great. Any stories or remembrances that he may have shared or you might have had from visiting him, or what it was like at the hotels at that time? Because it seemed that most of the wait staff at the best hotels were African Americans.
That's right. And they had what they call chambermaids to take care of the building, of course. But it seems now that evidently the men found that the women found that the men were working. Now you see as many men waiters as you do waitresses.
Yes.
In some places. I don't know how he would take that.
And were there particular schools that he recruited from? I'm sure
they
his
were
alma
from the
mater.
South, most of them. A lot of them were from
Mm-hmm.
South.
Mm-hmm.
They would know about Rehoboth Beach, and they would come up looking for work.
Yeah.
Then one would let the other know, and next year maybe he'd bring a brother or something like that.
And all of these waiters were college students.
It seemed to be. Not all of them, though, because during the war he had to hire some younger boys, younger men, and that gave them a start for their career, to make money. But they seemed to respect him, and he would hire him over again. Toward then, I don't remember just what he was doing. Probably the younger fellows were still making the money.
Mm-hmm. Talking about your father and his working at the Bellhaven, and kind of thought about the time frame and decided that, gee, he must have started working there about 1915, it sounds like, and he worked there until the mid-50s.
I believe so. Yes, he did.
And his responsibility was hiring and training most of the kitchen staff.
Yes, and dining room, kitchen and dining room staff. The first boss was his Miss Barnett, and she had confidence in him to do this hiring, as far as I know. And then it continued with the gentleman that now owns it.
Mr. Papa John?
Papa John, yes.
Uh-huh.
And of course, he and Papa John made it every once in a while. One of them would straighten the other out, I think. But he had a good relationship with his waiters and with Mr. Papa John, because the misunderstandings they worked out.
And what did they wear? What did the waiters wear in those days?
The waiters wore dark suits. According to the pictures, they wore black suits with I know Daddy wore a bow tie and a tuxedo, and I'm not sure that he wore that daily, but I really believe he did. But he always had his bow tie. And when he was dressed, he didn't wear long ties either. He kept that bow tie on most of the time till he retired. And he did hire college young men and girls, college ladies, to do the work in the hotel.
And how about training? What kind of training did he do for these folks?
Well, most of them hadn't had the experience, so he had to begin early. Train them how to carry a tray and how to respect people and how they could get the people to respect them and could make good money on their tips and things. In that day, they made really, like now it is today, they make more tips than they do on the job. So that was good for us because he would try to keep the farm help straight with my mother's help. And he could make the money for us to go to school, boarding school.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't get any further than the 9th grade here.
Yeah.
So he was interested in all of us getting an education. So he worked hard to do it, but he didn't seem to mind as long as we were making progress.
Yeah. And the dining room at the Bellhaven, can you remember anything about that? What that was like?
In my memory, I remember that the floors were dark. I don't know, oak, or not oak material, but a dark color. And I don't remember very much about the furniture and tables. But it looked good to me. Yeah, it was, something everybody didn't experience, But it was nice. And there were people came from everywhere then to stay, and he got very friendly with some of the people. In fact, one lady, this may not be important, but they had brought a dog named Googles, and Googles died, so they brought him out on the farm, and then we took him back our woods, and they buried Googles and put a G on the tree, and we could walk back there, and they'd come see his grave. And then there was another man that did the registration of people coming in, and he had a dog named Bunk. So I babysat with that dog one summer. I made a little money. But like I say, my father got friendly with lots of people because he was sociable. And
then after when was it he was active on some boards? Was that?
Yes, he was on the school board in the communities he lived in, and he was also on the first black high school board, as long as it existed. And he was probably chairman of the board part of the time. And the whole time, I said that the whole time it existed, he was on the board and was able to attend the meetings. And he was active in the Republican Party as far as politics. And he considered himself a politician, too.
And tell me again, because we mentioned this earlier, but we're down a little bit later in the tape. What was your father's full name?
Clarence Page Norwood.
Clarence Page Norwood. And your mother's full name?
Loretta Mall Norwood.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
She was from Lewis, the town of Lewis.
Related to the Malls that lived
right.
there. Well, let me see. That's about everything I have about your father and the hotel. Is there anything else I should know about your parents that you'd like to share with us? Any other thoughts about them?
They were devoted to the children. Tried to lead us right. And we were Methodists. We went to church. Wasn't anxious for us to get married.
But you later did,
Yes.
and who was the man in your life, and what was his name?
Paul Greenwich. We were married.
And what did Mr. Greenwich do? What was his
He
career,
was
and where did he come from?
He was his later years, he was a building contractor, and he trained fellows to build. and many of them are building now. That's the way they make their living. He was good with the young fellows. In fact, I feel like as he was good, as my father was good with the young fellows that came on. So that's my two older sisters have the children, and my younger sister and I didn't have any children.
And you mentioned them earlier. Your two older sisters' names are
Cora
was
the older, Agnes, then Dolores, and then Hilda.
And then Dolores, then you.
Mm-hmm. I was the Ann.
Yeah. The youngest, the baby of the family.
And always was. And when Daddy got to be in his 80s, he would introduce people, "This is my baby."
And you had really quite a career in this school district.
Yes,
yourself.
I did. Uh-huh.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that, but you really gave a lot back. So your family were really educators in this area and gave an awful lot back to the community.
I worked for 44 years, and one sister worked for 38, and the other one, the second oldest, moved to Philadelphia, and she worked there at Temple and several jobs. She was good too. All of them were good.
Yeah. It's a wonderful legacy your parents have left for the community.
And the grandchildren, their children, all finished college.
How many nieces and nephews do you have altogether?
I think I have 5 nephews and 1 niece. Mm-hmm.
I don't have any other questions to ask you. I feel like we've covered a lot, and want to thank you for your time. And if there's anything else you would like to add, we have time for that at this point.
I can't think of, as soon as you go, I say, "Oh, I should have told her this."
Mm-hmm.
But that's all right. It's what should I say? It's an honor for somebody to take the interest in the family.
Well, I think from the Historical Society perspective, we appreciate your time because the African American community has given so much to the success of Rehoboth, and often many people have not heard that story. So I want to thank you for sharing a part of that story with us today.
You're quite welcome. It's an honor, as I said before.
Thank you.
Now,
this is a postcard that Mrs. Norwood showed me of the Bellhaven Hotel. This is a photograph of Mrs. Norwood's husband, Mr. Paul Greenidge. This is a photograph of Mr. Clarence Norwood, Mrs. Norwood's father. This is a photograph of Mrs. Norwood's mother, Mrs. Loretta Norwood. These are photographs of Mrs. Norwood's sister. Who is the first person?
Cora Selby.
Cora Selby.
Agnes Scott. Dolores Handy. And Hilda Norwood.
Oh.